Today is the 24th of January, 2010. My name is Wayne Clark, and we are at the terrace at Beaverwick, 41 Beaverwick Lane in Slingerlands, New York. And I'm with the New York State Military Museum and Veterans Research Center out of Saratoga Springs, New York. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and date and place of birth, please?
George Warren Wood, White Plains, New York.
And when were you born?
Oh, 2/9/28.
And did you attend school in White Plains?
Yes. I graduated, had a certificate from, left before I graduated. And they sent me a certificate of a graduation certificate.
Okay.
For being in the service. They used that time that I would have been, in a senior in high school or whatever. So.
All right. And did you enlist or did you get drafted?
Yeah, enlisted.
And you enlisted in the Marine Corps? First you were in the Seabees?
Yeah, my mother would not sign for me to go into the Marines, which I wanted to go in. So the closest thing to the Marines was the Seabees at that time. Okay. So I signed up, but they were all older fellows. They were, old enough to be my father. And so I was just a squirt, 17 years old. So and we went to they took us up to the Aleutians. We had all foul weather gear and winter gear. We were going to come down with the Marine Corps down from the north to hit Japan before the president dropped the egg.
All right, let me go back a little bit. You went into the Navy,
right?
And you went in 1945.
45, yes.
What month did you go in, approximately?
About April, I guess it was.
All right, and where did they send you for basic training?
Up in New York State.
Sampson?
Sampson, yeah.
And was that your first time away from home?
Yes. Yes. Mother wouldn't sign for me for the Marines, so.
And what was it like at Sampson?
It was getting up early in the morning and drilling and things. Then I transferred from the regular Navy to the Seabees. Then I got more training in the Seabees down in Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
They had a Seabee base down there that they were all mechanics and carpenters and tradesmen.
What kind of training did you get down there?
Oh, military M1s, rifle practice, and and I had the rating I had gained in the Navy portion before I got in the Marines was specialist, third-class petty officer, and the description was I could be used for anything. I had no trade or no.
I see.
So they say it was a specialist X, it was called, and that's what I came out as a specialist, a third-class petty officer, which would be like a buck sergeant in the Marines,
Okay. And you mentioned you went in April, and the war had ended in.
When we were up there, when we were ready to come down, we had all this winter gear, and he dropped the bomb.
Well, before that, the war in Europe ended in April.
Yes, the war in Europe was over when I was in California.
All right.
I was in California at Treasure Island, there, which was the big Navy base in the West Coast.
All right. And whereabouts were you when the war with Japan ended? You were up in the Aleutians?
We were in the Aleutians, and we were waiting for the Marines to arrive because they were going to go and we were going to follow them in with bullets and it wound up. Some of this stuff is so long ago. It's
sure.
It might not jive with what I told Aaron, but it was close as I could remember, without any records in front of me.
Okay. And once you heard the atomic bomb was dropped, were you relieved or disappointed?
We were all. I was young and stupid then. I felt that I missed out on the action, but
Yeah.
there was plenty of action down in Guam when the Japs were all in the caves up
Oh,
in the
okay.
mountains there, and there's funny stories about them coming down with old outfits on. The Japs getting in the chow line, our chow line at night, and eating it, you know, and going back into the mountains. And it was a known fact that they were Japs, but you know,
And this was after the war had
after
ended.
the war had ended, but they were all in those caves all over those
Yeah.
mountains down in the Marianas.
Now you were in Guam too.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Now, did you encounter any of the?
Yes, that's where this was. We threw all the gear over the side of the boat
Yeah.
when we left. It was a Liberty ship. It
Mhm.
was a troop transport, you know, the bunks were this far apart, you know,
Yeah.
going up. And so when we got down there, we had all the gear was thrown away. So now we're in the tropics with all this winter gear that we had thrown over,
Yeah.
you know, and that's when I got assigned to a CB base, the 53rd Seabees, I think it was then. And all those fellows were eligible. They were all older guys, married, who were
Yeah.
eligible to come home, and we were on the bottom of the totem pole when it came to getting out. But let's see. Well, then I was right next to a Marine Corps airstrip there,
Mhm.
and we got very close with the Marines. We were the Seabees were the only ones of the Marines that really talked to and
Yeah.
consider as friends. We had uniforms at that time that were like the Marine Corps uniform, the khakis, and
Yeah.
then they put the little swabby outfits on, the Navy outfits after that. But so I got so chummy with these Marines that were there, that were combat guys that had seen a lot of action,
Mhm.
and we. When they left to go to the States, and I left to go back to the States, this is later on, I joined the Marine Reserve
Mhm.
in upstate New York, and I was in the reserve there in Harrison, New York, which was close to Whiteolains, my old hometown.
Okay. Now it says here you were discharged from the Navy in 1946.
Yeah, 46, yeah.
So you were only in for about a year.
Yeah, but a little over, about a year and a half, really,
Uh-huh.
of actual time. Then with the Marine Corps Reserve, I was in the Reserve, and used to go to sessions. And,
Yeah.
and then I got out of that on a dependency discharge because I was married by that time when I got
Yeah.
home, and so it was. It's hard to remember these things, the dates and everything.
Okay.
I've got a great big book on the Marine Corps from when it started.
Uh-huh.
I just taking up all your tape.
Oh, no,
When
no.
When it started, right up to, I think it was Vietnam.
Mhm.
My son, one of my sons was in the Marines. He was in Vietnam. So this big book, it's just thick, and it's got all the history, the dates, the exact dates of when they hit different beaches and when they were discharged and so
Mhm.
on. So I'm getting that. My son is bringing that down for me. I'm going to loan it to Aaron, so he
Okay.
can verify date, get actual dates. Some of these things are just off
Oh,
the
sure.
top of my head.
Yeah. So you joined the Marine Corps Reserves right after you got discharged?
Right after I got discharged from the Navy. Well, the Marines are part of
Sure.
the Navy. So,
Sure.
So, I was reserve. I used to go down once a week to the
Mhm.
armory down there, and we went through all the drills and new weapons and the usual
Sure.
stuff.
And then you went on active duty with the Marine Corps
Yeah, right when we were
for the Korean War.
right, for the Korean thing, we were called back.
And that was 1950 you went
Right,
in.
1950.
Now what rank were you at that point?
Well, they wouldn't take my CB rank, which was like a buck sergeant in the Marines. So they gave me a like a corporal rating, so about
Uh-huh.
2 ranks back from what I would have been if I went back into the Seabees again.
I
So-
see.
so-
And once you went on to active duty, where did they send you before you went to Korea?
They sent me to where the heck was it?
Was it Lejeune or?
No, I didn't go to Lejeune. Yes, down to Lejeune, Camp Lejeune. Yeah, that was it. And have photographed someplace at home of down in Camp Lejeune with the older Marines that were in the, you know, combat.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see any action to speak of, except at night when down in Guam, when the Jap prisoners would be headlights on the jeeps and vehicles were about this big around, and they would be shooting at those. So that's the only.
Okay.
And then when they were cleaning up, going to Saipan and those other islands to get those prisoners out of those caves, you know, it was part of the.
Okay. Did you go on to any of the other islands besides?
I was
Guam?
on Saipan taking bodies off there.
Okay.
With the Navy had.
Were they American bodies you were removing?
Some were that we would find, and most of them were current Japanese ones that the Marines had smoked out
I see.
with fire. You know.
Now, what did you do with the bodies of the Japanese? Did you rebury them?
I think they would just bulldoze under. You had so many, because that landing there, we lost a lot of troops in that landing. Somebody screwed up on the tide tables,
Mm-hmm.
and they were coming off the troop ships, coming in, they were getting hung up on the reef around. And they had to wade, the Marines had to wade in water with the weapons over their heads.
Yeah.
And they were being picked off by the Japs who were all up in the mountains there. So.
Yeah.
And that water was brown colored from blood. It was, you know, it was a rude awakening for you. When you're 17 years old, you've never been away from home. It was quite a growing up procedure.
Mm-hmm.
And they got that all cleaned up there, I guess. Then the Navy would go around, were going around before they landed, around the Guam and Saipan, and with their guns leveled, and just blowing trees and everything, you know, mowed everything down with the heavy duty stuff.
Yeah.
Which saved a lot of lives, but they screwed up on the timetable, and the barges were getting hung up on the reef.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody didn't read what the tide would be at that particular time, and they were moving the troops in.
Okay. Now, going to your Korean War service, you went to Lejeune, and were you training there before they sent you to?
No, we were standby, waiting to get enough together. See, we were about the first reserves that were called back in.
Yeah.
And we were waiting to get a big enough group together to
Mm-hmm.
go out and battalion size or something, say.
So you had a lot of World War II vets in there with you.
Yeah, most of them were. In fact, I ran into one in Troy, New York, at the hotel there. I kept looking at this Marine. He was a recruiter in the hotel, and I kept looking. I said, Jesus, he looks familiar as hell. So I went down, introduced myself, and he was Zakaloy, the guy. He was a buck sergeant, and he was called back in again to recruit, get some young blood in the Corps.
Sure. Okay, and you were in Korea for a year.
Yes.
Whereabouts did you land in Korea?
We didn't land. We came up, and the troop ship I was on stayed out of the harbor, out of the bay, and they were going in and they were picking up doggies, some Army boys that were coming home.
Mm-hmm.
But we were stuck there for, I'd say, 6 months or so. We couldn't get off. They wouldn't let us off the ship, of course. My brother's ship, who I hadn't seen in 3 years, my older brother, was in the Navy. He was on the a big cruiser. It was supposed to be the first American boat in the harbor. It was oh Christ. But I could see the ships over there, and they told me, and I tried to get the skipper to see if I could go over and at least see him again, you know. And no, you couldn't get off the boat. You had to stay on board.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned here a fellow named Bill Hacker.
Oh yes, he was in the Seabees with me down the Marianas. He was from Minnesota, and I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And I got a telephone call. I was training with the Continental Insurance Company. Took all the young servicemen that were discharged and put them on their training program, and he was one of the ones that came back to go to this school, and I hadn't seen him in years.
Uh-huh.
Last time I saw him, we were sitting watching a black and white movie with split coconut trees for seats, you know.
Huh.
And that was the last one I saw. There were a couple of boys from Whiteolains that were there in the CBs that had to haul all their water, so they drinking water and stuff. I can't even remember their name. I could remember the other night I was laying in bed and I thought, and boom, one name came back to me. But,
Now, once you completed your tour over off the coast of Korea,
right.
where did you go back to the States?
Yeah, went back to the States.
And were you discharged?
Discharged, and we came on two trains came back east. Some of them were dropped off in the Chicago area, you know, where they resided, and I went right on through to Lido Beach. Lido Beach, and I was actually checked out there, and my wife and father had come down to pick me up. And I was like skin and bones, and you know, it was.
Now, of course, you must have had a child then, right? Because
Oh yes, my wife had I forget, one or two children. That was part of the discharge I got, that she was going in for surgery,
Wow.
and I had a dependency discharge, they called it. And that's how I got out ahead of schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was at Lido Beach, and yeah, that was Lido Beach.
All right.
In Long Island, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, once you were discharged, did you stay in the reserves, or you just got
No,
out?
I got out completely because I went to work at the Continental on the training program for the big Continental Insurance Company.
Okay. So you used part of your GI Bill for that training?
Right. Well, that training was free.
Okay.
That was free. That was training from the Continental for the servicemen to get the young guys in. We that lasted. I was probably 2.5 years in Manhattan going to this training program, learning different types of insurance. Everything but life insurance was not part of our bag at all.
Okay. And did you make any other use of the GI Bill at all? Were you, after World War II, were you involved with the 5220 Club?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think I only took one $52. It's supposed to be 20 months or 20.
It's let's see, $20 a week for 52 weeks.
Yeah, I only took one once,
Okay.
and I was too busy to, you know, I didn't feel I deserved it. You know what I mean? There were other guys that put in hell of a lot more time than I did, and so I remember I only got one of them. My mother said, "You were only going to take one." I said, "Mom, that's all I deserved, really." And and I was sort of ashamed to take that, even, you know, with what it's not an attitude they have today, most people, but back then you were entirely different attitude about life and living.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Yes, I was. Let's see. I'm trying to. You're asking me questions. I have to think. Yes, I was in the Coast Guard Reserve too.
Oh, were you?
Before, and I'm a licensed captain with the Coast Guard. I could take charters out.
Oh.
As long as my craft was seaworthy and the proper personal, and a lot of people can do that if their craft is seaworthy, but they can't charge.
I see.
What they would do with it, they would roll up money and leave it on the seat of the ship for the guy.
Sure.
The test, that Coast Guard test was a tough test. It was, I took that in Albany, New York, at the Coast Guard station there, and so I had that license, and I got a pilot's license, you know, the usual gung-ho crap, you know. So.
What kind of
Beg pardon?
You said you had a pilot's license.
Yeah, personal,
For airplanes, you mean?
airplanes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and let's see what I have. The Coast Guard. I don't know. I think I might have gave Aaron the different certificates I had.
Okay. Yeah, you've got a ship license, pilot license, and coast. Okay. Coast Guard something.
Certificate.
Certificate.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And did you stay in contact with anyone you were in the service with?
No, not really. There was Bill Hacker, that fellow,
Yeah.
that was the only one I've seen. Well, everybody went their separate
Yeah.
ways, you know, and you forgot about half of them, you know. But,
Mhm.
no, well, I was busy going to different insurance schools
Yeah.
besides what the Continental was teaching.
Yeah.
And then after I completed that, they sent me to New Jersey in the field with all the insurance men that
Mhm.
outside. We didn't sell insurance to the public. We was visiting the local agents,
Mm-hmm.
the ones, and then helping them out with something they wanted some help on, to guide them on what actually they should be offering, you know. And
Okay. And so you probably didn't attend any kind of reunions or anything.
no, I did not. I
Okay.
did not.
How do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
I grew up fast,
Mm-hmm.
and these fellows that were old enough to be my father, you know, they smacked me around a lot, you know, just joking, you know.
Mhm.
But, I think that made me realize that there's other people in the world besides yourself.
Mm.
And I went from a 17-year-old like to a 30-year-old as far as attitude, and
Mm-hmm.
it was. And my son, the one Pete, was in the Marines. He was about as wild as you could get, you know.
Yeah.
I convinced him that he should go in the Marine Corps macho, you know. This is just before the Vietnam thing,
Mm-hmm.
and so he signed up for the Marines. His mother was boo-hooing and crying, so I said, well, there was no conflict going on then.
Yeah.
And so down in Paris Island, you know, you don't get much chance to do anything but, you know, the busting your
Yeah.
chops, you know. So it winds up that the first letter his mother this is funny. This first letter his mother gets from him is, "How could Dad do this to me?" Convince him to go in the Marines. You know? And he, you know, every time he sees me, he gives me the. But in fact, he was down when Aaron was there, filling him in on a few things, and talking with Jerry DeLuca. I said he was talking about hula hoops, you know, and the native girls down there. He was a doggy, and so I said, well, what about all of a sudden Tokyo Rose came back? We had an old radio that one of the guys who was familiar hooked it up and ran a wire way up on the mountain. They were picking up Tokyo Rose, his broadcast every night. Mm-hmm. We'd all be laughing like hell, you know. And as soon as I mentioned Tokyo Rose, he perked right up, and he that brought his mind back to that element. And so, the more you talk with the old guys, the more they drop a name like Agana was the big village on Guam. That was the headquarters. That one of our top admirals had a big home built on the top of the mountains there on Guam. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forget which one it was. It was a rude awakening, and you grew up fast.
Yeah.
You know. These guys that were in with me, the older guys, they were all like my father, you know. And they, you get out of line, they'd smack you around a little, you know. But I deserved it.
Mm-hmm. Is there any other incidents or anything that you want to add to the interview that we've missed?
Most of it I got with Aaron. He was enjoying himself listening to the. Mm-hmm. Well, when I was in the Seabees there on Guam, we got into some of the Aggie and tuba that was the native booze.
Oh, okay.
And that stuff was powerhouse stuff. And we got all loaded up at another CB and I, we got into the Gook village, we call them Gooks, they were the native Guam Indians. And we swiped two steamrollers from the CB base, and we went through the village with the steamrollers. I told them, don't, we're knocking down shacks and through their gardens, and then I could see the lights coming through, the little lights bouncing. It was a Jeep. It was the MPs coming looking for us. So
Wow.
we dumped those things there and went into the swamp. And we were all night getting through this swamp back to our base and get washed off, eaten up with bugs and everything. It was.
Well, you were lucky you didn't get eaten by one of those big snakes.
Oh yeah, the dog. Well, they knew we weren't big tender enough, but that was one of the little pranks we pulled. And well, then they swiped some water kegs off the Navy barges that were there, and they made raisin jack. They put raisins in the bunghole and fill it with water and leaves from the coconut trees, and they put that under the hood of the trucks and bouncing over the road. And in about 2 weeks, that was ready to blow a cork right out of it, And that was raisin jack, we call that. That was so much better than the local tuber and again, Aggie. Aggie was one of the. They'd hang these things to cure on the side of their shacks in bamboo. They cut the top of the bamboo off and put all this in it, and they hang it on the side of their little shacks that were up on stilts, And that was, you see a spider would build a nest over it, and the spider lasted about 2 days, and they'd kill the spider, the fumes coming out of that stuff, and that was powerhouse stuff. That had to be 100 proof at least, But then we had green beer. Oh, and then when I was back in the States, I owned a boatel down in Marathon, Florida. A boatel, they could come in by boat or cars or everything else. And for my guests that stayed there, I would take the coconuts. Now there's 3 sides to a coconut. I'd lay them in the mud out there, and before they left, it'd start sprouting out of the top of the coconut, the stem. And I would give each guest one of those to take home with them. They thought that was kind of nice. But then I had that motel, a boatel, and in fact, Frank Sinatra shot one of his movies there at this place. It was a 2-story masonry building that I owned, and he shot one of his when he was playing a part of a detective.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Frank Sinatra.
He played a character called Tony Rome.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was. This is long after this, what we're talking about here now. But so I was down in Florida for about 10 years until I picked up melanomas in my back. I have one spine right down my spine. I got my leg here is all chewed up, and they did skin grafts, and so I haven't been on my. I got holes in my ankles and everything else, but they said, well, we got to get at that right away. I said, don't worry about it. They had 5 operations already on it. I said, I got so many things wrong. I said, start from the top and we'll work down. When we get down there, I'll probably be dead anyhow.
Now, let's see, I was going to ask you, I was going to ask you about tropical diseases. When you were over in the Guam and in that area, did you suffer from like malaria or dengue fever?
No, I did not. My son did. He was on the hospital ship, but I never did. I never did. They'd probably bite me and pass out and die. But no, I never did. I was fortunate. I got. We dove off a cliff over there on Guam into an old bomb crater, and I went too deep and I scraped the top of my foot coming up, and that I had all kinds of trouble with that. They used that blue ointment and stuff on it, and being in that tropical climate, it never healed until I got back to the States. But I had to wear white socks on my foot for about a year after I got back to the States with colored socks. I mean, you couldn't go in a business suit to the office, the training program with white socks on it, you know.
Yeah.
You know. So and then that cleared up, but that's where I got all that cancer around my ankle too, the melanomas.
Wow.
They took a big piece of my thigh, you know, to make the skin graft, because there was no meat there for them to go in and cut these things out. So I got an ankle that scares you to death to look at.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm using this.
I see.
I don't get around that good. Plus I had strokes and everything else, which was, well, look at that.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you for your interview.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that that Aaron has that was more. He was very interested in staying with Jerry and I.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, well, thank you.
I hope I didn't bore you.
Oh, not at all.